everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Spies of the Pacific, the Claire Phillips Story. My name is Lauren Cornegay-Dollar, and I am the Adult Programs Coordinator here at the National Museum of the Pacific War. So I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Her name is Amanda, and she's coming to us all the way from the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much. It is really exciting to partner with your museum, and I love this vast network of people that we're reaching out to. And I want to say right off the top, there are going to be people listening who know a lot more about the Philippines and the war in the Pacific, and possibly even about Claire Phillips than I do, but I'm excited to share her story. We just really are fascinated by her here at the Spy Museum and had wanted to tell her story for some time. So I was excited when Lauren invited me to do a deeper dive on Claire Phillips. And here's this beautiful photograph that you see of her often reproduced. And then there's a really pretty pastel portrait inspired by that. And I thought I would use this very attractive image to talk a little bit about her background. Born in December of 1907 or 1908 in Michigan, Claire then grows up in Portland, Oregon. And she is a kid who is excited even as a teen by a life of adventure. I believe she does not finish high school because she goes off with an entertainment group. I believe she even subbed in as a snake charmer at some point, which doesn't go that well. So she then sticks with singing. And she's traveling with an American musical performance company, and she ends up in the Philippines. And she marries a gentleman, I believe his name is Manuel Fuentes, a Philippine merchant mariner. Now, in her memoir, she says she identifies him only as Mr. Wrong, but she does become Claire Fuentes. She adopts a daughter or has a daughter, little Diane. But she takes little Diane and goes back home to Portland when the marriage fails. But just like in high school, Portland is not enough for Claire. And she returns to the Philippines in September of 1941. And she's greeted by a friend, according to her memoir, who thinks she's just crazy for coming back to Manila at this time. She's like, didn't you notice that there was a ship escorting your ship? Don't you realize we're on the verge of war? But she was not intimidated. When you read her memoir, the whole verve is plucky, resourceful, risk-taking Claire. So back she goes, and she soon finds a job in a nightclub. She's performing as Claire de la Taste. She has little Diane with her. She finds caregivers for little Diane. And she ends up performing at the very modern, in her words, Alcazar Club. And it is there at the Alcazar Club on October 15th, 1941, that she meets this dashing American military man, Army Sergeant John V. Phillips. She calls him Phil. She is singing a song, is entranced by him, and he is, of course, entranced by her on the stage. And she says it really is love at first sight. They are very taken with each other. They really have a whirlwind romance. He is always asking her, according to her memoir, to marry him. But she is 10 years or so older than he is. She's an older woman, she's divorced, she has a child, she doesn't want to tie him down, but he is really devoted to her. And I have to say, she describes him throughout her memoirs as, handsome man. And I was delighted when I found this image of him because I thought, well, she was not lying. That is when good-looking man. And so they have this wonderful relationship through the fall of 1941, and she has apparently agreed to marry him by Christmas of 1941. But of course, you who are listening and watching probably know that something very big happens in early December 1941, and the Philippines are invaded just 10 hours after Pearl Harbor. So there they are in the thick of the war. They've had a lot of fun, play about town. Now the rubber is hitting the road. So Phil is moving throughout. He's telling her to prepare a go bag. There is a lot of talk in her memoir, a lot of incredibly robust description about what they packed, where they went, how Phil spirited her and little Diane out of Manila. And so she was able to travel along with him through December. And he said to her, these are his words from her memoir, and pardon me for slightly derogatory or just plain derogatory things. I'm just speaking the language of the time. He tells her, "We're going to dig in on Bataan and let the Japs take Manila. Unless our troops are out of there, the Nips won't consent to treating it as an open city." So they are off to Bataan and hiding out, working together, trying to support the patriotic cause. And he appears, and there at first she is staying with little Diane in rather decent places, houses, and Phil appears on Christmas Eve 1941 and spirits her away to a very romantic midnight wedding ceremony outdoors. And it's quite remarkable that they pull this off. And then he's rather gone, and she is just spending her time with the child, hiding out in progressively more rustic, more dangerous, more difficult to access places out in the countryside. And she is a liability to the people that are helping her. She has money, so she's able to buy some friendships. They're also, I think they're likable people who have had a network that they've established with people before the war, but she's a liability as an American woman. The Japanese have taken over, the U.S. is the enemy. She is a white American woman, so she begins a campaign of sun tanning to try to make herself look less distinctive. So they're hiding out, they're trying to survive, she's working on her tan, and according to her memoir, it's during one of these incidents when she's working on her suntan that she comes across Colonel Boone, and he is corporal, he identifies himself as corporal, Company D, 31st Infantry, and he's kind of holed up in the backcountry with a couple of other very decrepit American troops, but she begins to help them, getting them some medicine, some food. And Colonel Boone hatches this plot and feels like he can assemble a guerrilla network, and that he's going to be able to assemble other freedom fighters, and they are going to be able to attack against the Japanese, from their strongholds in the jungles. And it's during this time that she purports to see the death march. I mean, it's really, the detail reading her memoirs is very, very upsetting, very harrowing. She feels like she's got to do something. She knows Phil is a prisoner. He has been moved to a prison farther away, and she really wants to take action. This is an action person. So she decides to smuggle herself to Manila, leaving her daughter in the good care of their friends, and she is going to head to Manila and come up with a plan to help the guerrilla operatives and also the prisoners of war. And so we will see that her big plan, she gets some documents purport that she is Italian, that she is of Italian extraction. She has been born in the Philippines. Her name is Dorothy Fuentes. And she doesn't speak Italian, but she figures she can get away with this because she assumes the Japanese don't speak Italian either, and she'll just go with English and hope for the best. She works in one nightclub, is treated very roughly by some of the patrons, feels like the operator of the nightclub is not paying enough attention to the work, and she gets a backer to agree to help her open Club Tsubaki, and this image is from the club in rougher days, but she is going to use this club as a front to get money that she can share with the guerrilla effort, that she can use to send food and medicine to the guerrillas, also to prisoners of war, and also as a cover to spy on high-level Japanese military officials and business officials. So she opens the club on the anniversary of the date she met Phil, which is October 15th, 1942. Unfortunately, she finds out after she's opened the club that Phil had died previously in July. And she is truly heartbroken, but it really encourages her to redouble her efforts. And she gets to work with a really formal spy ring. They have code names, they work with coded messages, there's reference to adapting Pig Latin, and she takes for herself, her code name is High Pockets. And High Pockets was how she described her bra. She would always stash her valuables in her high pockets. And throughout the course of her memoir, she's always fishing out a diamond watch or something that she's stashed in her high pockets. So it was a great code name. And quoting from Colonel Boone in her memoir, this is what he has to say about her work during the war. He says she was an outstanding and resourceful spy in Manila for over 2 years, a guerrilla officer, leader, and organizer of the Manila Underground, and that she was comadre, patriotic, and that she was the godmother of the desperate guerrilla fighters. And I have to say, she is using this incredible club, Tsubaki, as a way to get the funds together. She's got Japanese businessmen in, she's got officers in, and they are putting on these shows. So while you're reading her memoir, you feel like you're in a movie script. She's talking about how she decorated the club. This is a war. Her husband's in prison, and then later turns out to have died in prison, but she's talking about the orchid drapery that she gets for the club, the peanuts that they have on the table, because they have to make the Japanese officials feel like this is exclusive in order to draw them in. And she is very successful, and they achieve money, supplies, and information for the guerrillas and for those in prison. She has named the Club Tsubaki for the camellia flower. And club was a suggestion from one of her colleagues because it meant it was really elite and exquisite. So it's got all the, when you read her memoir about her exploits, there is all the real spy story stuff that you're used to from the movies, but according to her, it happened in real life. They are tested by a false dangle operation in which a certain American colonel reaches out, but she gets a sense that it's wrong because she said no American in dire straits would use such long and formal words. So her gut gets her through a lot of these tight spots. And by late 1943, she is coordinating with 3 different guerrilla bands. The original outfit that she that was gathered by Colonel Boone, another under the command of Colonel Thorpe, and a third under the command of Colonel Strawn. So she is working with them, and one, in addition to all the support and information that she shares, one of the claims that she makes that is extremely epic is the evening that she was able to stall the commander of a submarine flotilla. There are 40 subs in this flotilla, and she is able to distract the commander with an endless array of dance performances, different spiked drinks, great conversation, really good flirting, and that they are delaying their departure. And her whole plan with this is that she can get the news communicated to Colonel Boone, who can then relay it to the American forces. And she said that later, long after this, one of the members, a sole member of the flotilla, came back. He had survived the sinking of all of the subs and had been rescued. And as she said, bottoms up, which he thought was funny, not realizing she was really on the side of the Americans. Another really wonderful spy moment. We love those nail biting. The whole thing is a nail biter, but hearing her talk, she's supposed to be Italian, and one of her patrons is crazy for the song O Sole Mio, and he says, you must know the words to it. I can't wait to hear you perform that. Well, a well-trained spy probably would have done a little more Italian research. I know it's wartime, so she really doesn't know the words, so she proceeds to try to get him a little bit tipsier and tipsier, and then she has her band play as loud as possible while she renders the song by just singing the one line she knows over and over. So I found that really kind of fascinating. And then she also references a film that many of you may be aware of, Dawn of Freedom. I've got a few stills from the film. You may have seen these before. This is a Japanese propaganda film from 1944 that is to celebrate how the Philippines are just doing so well now that the Japanese have taken control. And we can just move through these images because she says in her memoir that she watched the filming of these, and was very controversial because they used some American prisoners of war to film these. And then there's even an image that harkens back to the open city comment that her beloved Phil made when the conflict began. So eventually she is arrested on May 23rd, 1944, and she is moved through a series of prisons from something small, very near her club, no one knows where she is, to larger, to fort situations, and she undergoes incredibly, incredibly harsh interrogation. She describes waterboarding and even worse things that happen to other prisoners, and she is eventually receives a death sentence and is moved to Bilibid prison. She even talks about once being blindfolded and feeling a beheading sword at the back of her neck, but then is not actually murdered. They were trying to get more information out of her. She always suggests that she would never give up anything unless if she had heard that someone was already in prison, someone from her spy ring, she might then say, oh, well, this code name refers to that person. And her interrogators would get very frustrated with her because they'd say, oh, high pockets, you always start by telling the truth and then you start with your lies again. And somehow or other, she ends up having her sentence commuted to just 12 years. And she ends up at a women's correctional institute. And that is where the wonderful moment comes when the Americans come back, and she is released on February 10th, 1945, about 50 pounds lighter than her natural weight, incredibly, anemic. She suffered the loss of a husband, she suffered torture, she suffered starvation, and the loss of many friends and people in the spy ring. So, what's the next chapter for High Pockets? Well, she writes her memoir, and she also writes this book with another gentleman, Manila Espionage, which comes out in 1947. And then she receives the Medal of Freedom. We'll see an image of her receiving that in 1948 from General Mark Clark. Quite an amazing journey, but she is not finished. The book becomes a movie. She has a lot of fanfare. This is her being greeted at LaGuardia in 1951. Major Kenneth Boggs is giving her a kiss. He credits her with saving his life with some of the incredible supplies, medicine, money that she was able to get to prisoners of war and also to the guerrilla troops. And we have some images from the movie. I Was an American Spy, a B movie, but there it is. And then this is Claire around the time of the release of the movie. And she does not get to live long after this. She has returned to the United States, and she ends up dying in 1960 from meningitis. Not terribly old. We have a photo of her from later in her life, still a very beautiful lady and a very glamorous woman, truly a showgirl spy. And I would welcome any questions or any thoughts you have, Lauren. I'm sure there are people on this who could tell this story even better than I could.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for your lovely presentation. I learned a lot about Claire, and I am sure our audience did too. Now is the time for our at-home audience to type in any questions they may have into the chat box. And I see that we already have some coming. Actually, the first question is similar to the one I was thinking of. So was she reunited with her daughter after the war? What happened to little Diane?
So she always made sure that when she could, little Diane was with her and always would have a good caregiver. When you're keeping nightclub performer hours, it's a little bit different, but she had little Diane with her until it was too dangerous, and then she had her in the countryside, always with people hiding out. So she was reunited with her when she was released from prison. Little Diane didn't quite know who she was, eventually said, "Oh, are you my mommy?" And Diane went back to Portland, Oregon with her, and then continued her life in the United States. And I am interested in learning more about little Diane myself. So if anyone knows, happy to hear more. There's a woman who believes she is Claire Phillips' granddaughter that I've been trying to look into. I'm excited by that lead.
Okay, well, we have a lot of questions coming in. This is great, guys. Let me try and pick out what was the next one that was popping up. Okay. Could you tell us again why she was arrested? What led to that? Can you clarify that?
Oh, they were very suspicious. They'd found these letters. They were code, this money that was going out. And she saw, during her interrogations, they would confront her with some of the coded letters, and she realized she had gotten really sloppy. So she had let she had led the trail back to her in some of these notes.
Okay.
And there are also, people probably gossiped. It was wartime. People were having a hard time surviving. So I'm sure there were probably some tips that people were paid for.
Great. Okay. Can you speak to how the spy ring formed? Was it similar to how they formed in Europe, or was it a different kind of beast?
It seems very grassroots. It was not a formal thing, but that's very much like Europe too, where it's people with commonality. You kind of get together and realize that you have the same aims, and you've got to really feel people out, because who knows, you could think someone's on your side and ready to work for the resistance, and then it turns out, no, they're going to turn you in. But she had a lot of, remember, she had lived in Manila, so she was working with people she knew and trusted. And there are some friends that she became very disappointed in because they became opportunists and just seemed to work directly with the Japanese who were in power. But she had a network of friends and people that she trusted that she could build from.
Okay. Do you know if she had any association with Ted Lewin? He was running the black market?
I don't know that, but if anybody in the chat knows it.
But feel free to shoot us an answer on that one. Do you know if she testified in the Japanese war crime trials?
I am not aware of that.
Okay. I didn't read anything about that in my research about her either.
Yeah.
So, okay. Can you remind us the name of her books?
All right, so Agent High Pockets is available. This is like a reprint of her memoir that was easy to get a hold of. I got this on Amazon. Manila Espionage, she is co-written with, I think it's Myron Goldsmith. I have it on the slide, I can't see it. That one you can also get a reprint of. And then there is one of our guests has a novel, or I'm sorry, has a book about her. So there are some interesting books about her that are out there that are newer.
Yes, we'd like to go ahead and give Edna's book a plug, codename High Pockets.
Thanks for reminding. I can't see any of those good details. Thank you, Lauren.
She is also in the chat helping to answer some of the questions. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I think we answered the questions about the daughter, and it seems as though we have an ROTC group watching and a school group watching. So hi, guys.
Hi.
And this is an interesting one. Wikipedia says that she had another daughter. I only know of the one.
She did. I went down an interesting rabbit hole with, people writing about their knowledge of her afterward, and a relative, I believe, of Phil's said that she had written about 4 years before her death, had written them that she had remarried a man like John, that's John Phillips, after the war, and lived in the San Francisco area, but I have not seen anything about another daughter. And she was born in 1908, so I don't know if this was an earlier daughter or a later daughter, but we can do some math on if she had a baby at 50 or not. So,
Okay. Well, so we are just about out of time for today's presentation, and I want to say a big thank you to everybody at home who tuned in, and also to Amanda. Thank you so much for your presentation and your time today. Before I let everybody go, I want to do a couple of reminders. So don't forget, we have another webinar coming up next month. I'll be talking with my coworker, Erin Schumann, about our outposts and be showing you a digital outpost. So again, thank you to everybody for attending today's event, and we will see you next time.